You are 19, kneeling on bare concrete, pulling wire through a wall that has no rooms yet. You earn $32.73 an hour, 42% of the man beside you. He tops out at $93.52. The gap is not skill. On paper, you are both wiring the same building. The difference is a percentage written into a contract, and it only moves when a counter reaches a number. 8,000 hours. Somebody has to sign for every one of them. This is every level of an electrician's career, and what it costs to climb. If you want to see how these trades really pay, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. We start at level 1, the first period apprentice. The first period apprentice earns $32.73 an hour, roughly $68,078 a year. Most are 18 to 22. You carry, you dig, you bend half-inch pipe until your forearm burns, and you learn that a bend that looks right and a bend that lands right are two different things. You sweep the deck at the end of every shift, and you sweep it again when the foreman looks at it. Nobody hands you a tool because you want it. You get handed one because a journeyman is tired of doing that part himself. On a Thursday, you cut a home run 3 feet short because you measured to the panel and not to the top of it. The whole pull comes back out. It costs the crew 40 minutes and it costs you the rest of the day in silence. Getting in requires a passing score on an aptitude test, an interview with a ranked committee, and a signed indenture with a joint training program. The Electrical Training Alliance runs the classroom side of it. A great many wash out here, and it is almost never the work. It is the classroom. 2 nights a week for 5 years, after a full day on your knees, with a test at the end of each one. Here is what nobody tells you. Your hour counter does not start when you get hired. It starts when the paperwork is filed. Men have lost half a year to a form that sat in a drawer. The next raise is not something you ask for. Here is the part outsiders never see, because it does not look like pay at all. In a union inside agreement, the apprentice wage is not a wage. It is a fraction. First period is 42% of the journeyman rate. Third period is 52. Fourth period jumps to 65. Sixth period is 85. Then you are at 100. The percentage does not move on a calendar. It moves on hours. 1,000 in the first 2 periods, 1,500 in each of the ones after, 8,000 at the end, and roughly 900 classroom hours on top of that. You cannot negotiate any of it. You cannot be worth more. You can only be signed for. These numbers come from one local agreement in Seattle, a high-cost city with a strong contract. Nationally, the median for this trade is $30.38 an hour, $63,190 a year. The ladder is the same shape everywhere. The rungs are not. The fourth period apprentice earns $50.65 an hour, roughly $105,352 a year. Most are in their early 20s. You are past halfway now. You lay out your own work. You read a print in the morning, and you do not ask a second time. You know which inspector wants the grounds landed a certain way, and you do it that way before he asks. You also start touching the part of the trade that can end you. Panels, terminations. The difference between a circuit that is off and a circuit that is dead. On a Tuesday, you land a neutral on the wrong bar in a subpanel. Nothing happens. 2 weeks later, a shared neutral runs hot in a ceiling, and somebody smells it. You spend a Saturday tracing your own work with a foreman standing behind you. Getting here requires 4,000 logged hours, a clean record on your classroom nights, and a passing grade on the code portion. The National Electrical Code is republished every 3 years, and the version you learned is not always the version you are inspected against. Plenty of them stall right here. Not because the work is hard, because the money finally feels like enough, and a man who is comfortable stops studying. Here is what nobody tells you. The jump from third period to fourth is 13 points in one step. Nothing else in the ladder moves like that, and almost nobody knows it is coming. That step is also where the trade starts, asking you to work things you cannot see. The sixth period apprentice earns $66.24 an hour, roughly $137,779 a year. Most are around 25. You run a small piece of the job now, 2 helpers, a floor, a deadline. You order material. You call the shop when the gear is wrong, and you learn that being right about the gear is worth less than being early about it. You are also close enough to the top of the scale that the difference between you and a journeyman is a card in a wallet. On a Wednesday, you set a conduit run an inch into the clearance the sprinkler main needs. The inspector fails the ceiling. 2 days and a lift to move 11 feet of pipe, and every one of those hours goes on the job cost, not on your check. Getting here requires 6,500 logged hours, the last of your classroom credits, and a foreman willing to put your name on a layout. IBEW Local 46 in Seattle publishes the whole scale on one sheet. A good many burn out in this stretch, and the reason is boring. Overtime. The money is real, and so is what 6 days a week does to a person who has small children at home. Here is what nobody tells you. The last 1,500 hours are the slowest of the 5 years, because you are already doing the job and still getting paid a fraction of it. The card is what changes that, not the skill. The journeyman wireman earns $77.93 an hour, roughly $162,094 a year. Most reach this near 26. The percentage is gone. You are the 100 now, and every apprentice on the floor is a fraction of you. You work alone. You take a print, a floor, and a date, and nobody checks your terminations. In the state of Washington, that card also means you can be the only licensed person on a small job, which is heavier than it sounds. On a Monday, you assume a panel is dead because the breaker is off. Your meter says otherwise. There is a second feed nobody drew. You stand there for a moment, doing the arithmetic on what almost happened. Getting here requires 8,000 documented hours, completion of the classroom program, and a passing score on the state license examination. The exam is open book, and men still fail it, because the book is thousands of pages and the clock is not. A small share never sit the exam at all. They stay at 6th period money, in a trade where the last step to full scale is a test they are afraid of. Here is what nobody tells you. Nothing about the exam tests whether you can run work. That is a separate skill, and the trade has no test for it at all, which is exactly the problem with the next rung. The foreman earns $85.72 an hour, roughly $178,297 a year. Most are past 30 by now. The raise is 10%, written into the agreement as a premium on top of scale. For that 10%, you stop being paid for your hands. You are paid for a schedule. You know how many feet of pipe went up yesterday, and how many can go up tomorrow, and you know it before the general contractor asks you in a meeting you did not want to attend. On a Friday, you release a rough-in before the mechanical crew is finished. Their duct lands where your pipe is. Nobody argues about who was there first, because the answer is on your sign-off, with your initials on it. Getting here requires years at full scale, a contractor who trusts your numbers, and a willingness to be the one who says no. OSHA does not cite a crew, it cites a company, and the paperwork starts at your level. Hardly any of the best hands make good foremen. The trade promotes the fastest installer and then wonders why the job slips. Here is what nobody tells you. Your 10% premium can vanish on Monday. Foreman is an assignment, not a rank, and when the job ends, you go back in the pool at scale. Which is why the last rung is measured in jobs, not in years. On the 4th of January, 2021, at 9:15 in the morning, an electrician was working at a new 2-story commercial building in Huntsville, Alabama. He was troubleshooting a courtyard light that was not working. He came into contact with an energized 277-volt circuit. He was killed by electrocution. 277 volts is not exotic. It is the ordinary lighting voltage in almost every commercial building in the country. OSHA cited the employer under the construction electrical standard and under the training standard. The proposed penalty was $8,850. Across the construction industry, about 9% of deaths are electrocutions. Electricians are the single largest occupational group inside that number. Between 2011 and 2015, 21 electricians a year died that way. There is no rung on the ladder where this stops being true. The first period apprentice and the general foreman are behind the same ceiling. The general foreman earns $93.52 an hour, roughly $194,521 a year. Most are in their 40s, 20% over scale, and you may not touch a tool for a month. You run several buildings, several foremen, and a manpower count that changes every Monday. On a Wednesday, you promise a general contractor 8 men for a deck pour. You have 6, 2 come off a job across town, and by Friday, both jobs are behind, and both of those are now also yours. Getting here requires a record across multiple jobs, a working relationship with the hall that dispatches your manpower, and the ability to read a schedule 3 months out. The inside construction agreement sets the premium at 20%, and nothing else about the job. Very few want it. The premium is real, and so is the fact that you now own every mistake made by people you cannot see. Here is what nobody tells you. This is still an hourly job. At the top of the ladder in this trade, you are still on the clock, and the clock still stops, which is where the ladder actually ends, and where a different one starts. There is a rung above all of this, and it is not paid by the hour at all. It is the master electrician. That license is what lets a company pull a permit and put its name on the work. In Texas, a contractor cannot hold a license at all without employing a master, and that master may only be assigned to one contractor, unless he owns more than half of the business. In New York City, the master license takes 7 years of documented experience under another licensed master before you may apply. That is the answer to the percentage. For 5 years, your pay was a fraction of another man's number, and it moved only when a counter moved. The counter stops mattering the day your name is on the permit, because from that day, the license is not a rate, it is the asset, and the only way to be paid for owning it is to stop being paid by the hour. There is no public wage table for that rung, because there is no wage. First period apprentice, $32.73 an hour, sweeping the deck. Fourth period, $50.65, laying out your own work. Sixth period, $66.24, running a floor. Journeyman, $77.93, and the fraction is gone. Foreman, $85.72, paid for a schedule instead of your hands. General foreman, $93.52, and a manpower count that changes every Monday. 8,000 hours to stop being a percentage of somebody else. 900 nights in a classroom to be allowed to sit one exam. And behind every ceiling on every one of those jobs, the same 277 volts. The trade does not pay you for what you know. It pays you for what somebody signed. Next, every level of a United States Army career,